Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
The Halston Grand looked like a place built for people who spoke in polished vowels and posed when they laughed. The kind of place where champagne wasn't just served, it had a dress code. And yet, there I was, standing just outside its velvet-roped entrance, adjusting my tie in the reflection of a polished black SUV that wasn't mine. The tux fit well, not flashy, just enough to say I belonged. I had paid for half this event, after all. Sienna wanted the ballroom. I signed the check. Inside, the lobby buzzed with clinking glasses and thin laughter, all bouncing off marble floors and gilded light fixtures. I caught glimpses of Sienna ahead of me, strutting in heels that clicked with confidence. Her dress shimmered in gold, and heads turned as she passed, not because of me beside her, but because of her alone. That was how she liked it. Her world curated in filters and spotlight angles. I was there to support, not to shine. We reached the top-floor ballroom where the party was already in full swing. Her colleagues were everywhere, tight smiles, firm handshakes, and way too many conversations about who was moving to which department and who just got a raise. I hovered at her side, a shadow trying to stay out of the frame, until she broke away and drifted into the crowd. I watched her glide through people like a pro, touching elbows, laughing at jokes I knew weren't funny. Then I saw Trish, her work bestie with the high ponytail and judgmental eyes, spot me. She nudged Sienna, and that's when it happened. Sienna's voice rang out across the group, far too loud, far too proud. "Oh, him? That's just my driver." It took me a second to realize she was talking about me. At first, there was laughter. A few chuckles, lighthearted and confused. Then the silence settled, slow, heavy, awkward. I scanned me from head to toe, trying to reconcile the clean tux and steady gaze with the title she'd thrown on me like a jacket that didn't fit. My throat tightened, but I didn't flinch. I didn't storm out or make a scene. That wasn't my way. I waited until the moment felt still again, until the conversations resumed in awkward trickles and she turned her back to me like I'd just been dismissed from service. Then I walked. Calmly, purposefully. I reached her side, touched her elbow gently, and leaned in close. "Sienna," I said quietly. "Can we talk?" Her eyes didn't soften. They rolled, like I'd interrupted her momentum. We stepped out onto the balcony where the air was cooler and the noise more distant. Her back was turned to the city, arms folded like a queen being inconvenienced. When she finally looked at me, her expression was vacant, blank in the way a mask is when it's slipped too long onto the skin. "You should be grateful I even let you in," she said. Just like that. Flat. Cold. No joke hiding beneath it. I blinked once. The words didn't sting. They settled like dust on old wounds. I looked at her for a long moment, maybe trying to find the woman I'd fallen for. The one who used to dance barefoot in our kitchen. The one who once told me she admired how grounded I was, how real. But that version of her must have packed up and left long before tonight. So, I nodded. Not in agreement, not in defeat. Just to acknowledge what had just happened. I turned, picked up my jacket from the coat rack, and walked away. Not a word more. I didn't rush. I moved slow. Through the lobby, past the concierge, past the guests arriving in tuxes and ball gowns, through the doors I had walked in thinking I was part of something. And maybe I was. Just not in the way I thought. Out on the sidewalk, the cool night air hit me like clarity. A valet offered to call me a car. I declined. I needed to walk. I needed to let the sounds of the city fill in the spaces where her voice used to live. I wasn't angry. Not yet. That would come later. For now, I was just a man in a suit walking home from a party he paid for, reduced to a footnote by the person who swore to love him. We met under a different kind of light, bright summer sun, not chandeliers. It was a charity basketball tournament in the city park, one of those neighborhood efforts to raise money for school supplies and uniforms. I'd sponsored a couple of teams, donated materials to help rebuild the rundown bleachers, even patched up the court myself during off hours. I wasn't looking for anything that day. Just wanted to shoot around, maybe sweat out a week's worth of stress and drywall dust. She walked in like she owned the heat. Sienna Walsh. Even her name had rhythm. White sundress, oversized sunglasses, her laugh spilling out like it knew it would be welcome anywhere. I noticed how people gravitated to her, young, old, didn't matter. She didn't have to ask for attention. It found her, clung to her like perfume. She called the game with Trish on the mic, teasing the players with that perfect balance of flirt and challenge. I was in the middle of the court when she pointed and said, "You with the beard, you play like you've got secrets." I smiled. Only one. I called back. That night, I asked if she wanted to get drinks. She said yes without hesitation. No game. No front. Or at least that's what I thought. Back then, everything felt like music. We traded playlists. She put me on to old-school R&B mixes I hadn't heard since my dad's radio days. I showed her acoustic tracks she claimed were too emo, then later admitted made her cry on solo drives. We had rooftop dinners, midweek movie marathons, little road trips where we didn't even need a destination, just gas, snacks, and time. We talked about the future like we could sketch it ourselves, make it ours. No doubt. No friction. But now I look back, and the signs weren't quiet. They were screaming in polite tones. She flinched the first time someone called me a contractor at a friend's barbecue. We were 2 months in, and I'd been doing a renovation for the guy who hosted. He introduced me to a couple of guests, bragging about the kitchen I'd just finished for him. I saw her expression shift, just for a second. Her smile froze, her eyes darted. Later that night, she said, "You should just call yourself a designer or something. It sounds more polished." I laughed it off. I thought she was joking. I thought she was protecting me from sounding too blue-collar. But it wasn't about protection. It was projection. I invited her to a few of my project sites. Houses I was remodeling, duplexes I was flipping. Nothing fancy, but mine. Spaces with potential. I'd light up showing her before and afters. The way I transformed something crumbling into something someone could call home. She always had an excuse. Work's been crazy. Ugh, the dust messes with my allergies. I'll come next time, I promise. There was no next time. She never brought me to her office, either. Said it was boring. You'll hate it, she'd claim. Fluorescent lighting and tech nerds. Trust me, it's not worth the drive. It never occurred to me that I'd been hidden. That the man who paid half her rent, who fixed her cabinet doors and unclogged her tub when maintenance ghosted her, wasn't worthy of meeting her colleagues. Darius noticed. My best friend since middle school, the one who knew me before the work boots and job site bids, before the polished business card and LLC filing. He never liked her much, not in the petty way, not in the jealous way. Just something didn't sit right with him. He pulled me aside once, maybe 6 months into the relationship. She wants the image, not the man, he said, arms folded as we stood in front of a client's broken fence. I shook my head. You don't know her. No, he replied. But I know you. And I know when you're shrinking. I didn't want to believe him. I had always been the calm one, the quiet builder, the guy who solved problems and stayed steady. Love was supposed to be simple when you stayed steady, right? But pride kept me patient. Pride let me believe that if I just kept showing up, kept loving her the right way, she'd start loving to reel me back. That maybe all those little shrugs and flinches were just growing pains. That she'd come around. Love didn't make me blind. It just made me willing to look past the parts one didn't want to admit were real. And now, those signs feel like road flares. And I see them all, every single one. She knocked on my door just after 9 a.m., but I was already up. I'd been up since 6, sipping coffee in silence, letting the bitterness roll over my tongue like it might wash away the memory of last night. The jacket I wore to the Halston Grand still hung on the back of my kitchen chair, untouched, a reminder of the suit I bought to celebrate someone who didn't mind pretending I was something I wasn't. Through the peephole, I saw her, Sienna, in full makeup like it was another performance. Her lips glossed, lashes thick, not a single hair out of place. I opened the door and leaned against the frame, arms folded. She didn't wait for an invitation. She brushed past me like she still had access to everything in this space, like she hadn't stripped me of my dignity in a room full of strangers less than 12 hours ago. "Malik, please," she started, voice already trembling, already rehearsed. I didn't say anything. Just watched her pace the living room with a hand pressed against her chest like her heart might fall out if she didn't keep it in place. "It was a joke," she said. God, it was supposed to be funny. People joke all the time at these things. You know how they are. I didn't know who they were, not really. Her colleagues. Her crowd. The ones she never wanted me to meet until I showed up as the entertainment, apparently. She looked at me, eyes glossy. I didn't mean it like that. I was nervous. Trish was standing right there, and she always judges, and I panicked. I still didn't speak. She hated that. She always hated my quiet. Said it made me hard to read. She preferred big emotions, grand gestures, loud forgiveness. She didn't understand that sometimes silence was the emotion. I said I was sorry, she added, voice rising a notch. What more do you want me to do? I tilted my head slightly, taking in the perfection of her posture, the way she blinked twice, waited, then blinked again too evenly, too deliberately. The tears were fake. Not the pain, maybe, but the performance of it. Then she tried a different tactic. We should take a trip, she said suddenly. Get away. Just the two of us. Napa, maybe. Somewhere nice. I'll even book it. I raised my brows. You'll book it. Her smile cracked just enough to reveal the truth. Well, I mean, we can put it on your card, and I'll out. I turned away, walking toward the kitchen. I poured myself another cup of coffee and let her voice fade behind me. Sienna was still talking, pitching the idea of a winery, of us time, of how it doesn't have to end like this. I took a long sip of the coffee and stared out the window above the sink. The street below was quiet. A delivery truck idled across the way. Somewhere down the hall, a neighbor's baby cried. Real sounds. Real things. Not this scene playing out behind me. Eventually, I turned to face her again. Her arms were crossed now, defensive. The makeup hadn't smudged. She hadn't cried. Not really. I studied her, trying to find the girl I met at that basketball game. The one who laughed with her whole chest and danced barefoot in the kitchen and played air guitar with a broom handle. But she wasn't here. She hadn't been here for a while. Somewhere along the way, that girl got replaced with this carefully sculpted version, the one that made moves like chess, not love. You've humiliated me, Sienna, I said finally, voice low, calm. You looked me in the eye and called me your driver. It was a joke. No, I interrupted. It was a reveal. Her face twisted. You're making this bigger than it is. No, I said again, firmer now. You're trying to make it smaller than it was. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't. Maybe this was the first time I'd really drawn a line in the sand. I set my cup down on the counter, walked to the door, and opened it. You should go, I said. Her eyes widened. You're kicking me out? No, I said. I'm just not keeping you in. She stood there for a second, her pride wrestling with her shame, and then she walked out. Not stormed. Walked. Graceful to the last second. She didn't look back. When the door clicked shut behind her, I leaned against it and exhaled slowly. I wasn't angry. I was awake. It started with a chirpy phone call on a Thursday afternoon. I was finishing up a drywall install at a duplex downtown, wiping plaster from my fingers with a shop towel when my phone buzzed. Sienna. I stared at the name for a second, debating whether to answer. Curiosity won. Hey, babe, she said, voice high, sugar slick. You busy? I could already hear it, the setup. The way she only called me babe when she wanted something. Still, I played along. Just wrapping up a site, I said. What's going on? There was a pause, that slight inhale before she launched. So, my birthday's coming up. I know, I said evenly. And I want to do something special this year. Nothing small. I was thinking, dinner at Lucerne's. Lucerne's. The new high-end place uptown with a waiting list longer than a tax audit. I passed by it once while dropping off some reclaimed oak to a furniture client across the street. It had that look. Dark windows, gold accents, valet out front like a luxury dealership. I could already hear the clink of wine glasses and the curated playlist inside. Sounds fancy, I said, still wiping my hands. Only the best, right? She replied. I've already talked to the restaurant about the private room. I want to invite a few people from work, just a dozen or so. Trish, Bryce, Selena, maybe even the DevOps guys. You know, network a little, celebrate. I waited. There was more. So, she continued, it's about $1,200 for the room. That's with wine pairings, tax, all that. I figured I'd take care of the invites and decorations, and you could just cover the room. She didn't even pause to see how it landed. Just breezed right through like we were talking about buying napkins. No mention of whether I'd be invited. No hint of whether she considered this a joint celebration, or if I was just the sponsor for her social ladder climb. I pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at it like maybe I misheard. I hadn't. She kept talking. It's going to be perfect. And honestly, it's a small thing compared to everything you've done for me. I mean, what's a little more, right? What's a little more? Like the last 2 years hadn't been built on my labor and her expectations. Like I hadn't already helped fund her certification programs, her rent when she got furloughed, her new car down payment when the old one gave out. I'd given freely, not to buy love, but because I thought we were building something together. Now it felt like I'd been laying the bricks while she picked out wallpaper for someone else. Still, I said, of course. Send me the details." She laughed, delighted. "I knew you'd say yes. You're the best." After we hung up, I didn't move for a minute. Just stood there in the middle of the site, sawdust in my hair, sweat drying on my arms. A contractor on his knees every day for the kind of future she could Instagram about. I'd built houses with less foundation than this relationship, and those still stood straighter than what we had. That night, I sat down at my desk and opened a drawer where I kept old cards. Expired, canceled, or just never used. I pulled one out, a heavy black Visa from an old account I'd shut down after refinancing my truck. It looked real. Still had the chip. Still swiped clean. But it was dead. I held it between my fingers, turning it slowly. My reflection warped in the curve. This wasn't about revenge. I wasn't trying to embarrass her or catch her in some grand trap. It was about the truth. About stopping the performance, for both of us. Because something had shifted in me. The Malik who gave without question, who nodded through cold dismissals and quiet disrespect. He was packing his bags. I didn't want an apology anymore. I didn't need her to cry or explain or swear she meant well. I needed distance. And maybe, just maybe, I needed her to experience the same confusion I'd felt standing in that ballroom. The shock. The public unraveling. Not because it would fix anything, but because it might make her pause long enough to see what she'd become. When I sealed the envelope with the canceled card and tucked it into my jacket pocket, I felt lighter. Not healed, but ready. The dinner was coming. And for once, I wasn't going to be the one shrinking to fit her frame. Lucerne glowed like a jewel on the corner of Arlington and 12th. Gold lighting pooled behind frosted glass. Valet attendants in slick uniforms guiding foreign cars into tucked-away spaces. The sidewalk outside was pristine, like even the dust had been told not to show up without a reservation. I'd been working all day, foundation repair on a duplex, but I came home early, showered, shaved, and pulled out the tux. Black satin lapels, crisp shirt, cufflinks from my father. I wasn't going inside to make a scene. I just needed to see it. I needed her to see me. The hidden bar was nestled just past the elevator, dimly lit, with leather seating and a clean line of sight through the arched glass partition that looked into the private dining room. I ordered a neat bourbon and took a seat near the corner, just close enough to watch, just far enough not to be noticed. And there she was, Sienna, lit up like a magazine spread, smiling that curated smile, shoulders back, surrounded by her chosen few. Bryce was next to her, laughing at something she said, leaning in too close for a man who was just a teammate. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away, just placed her hand casually on his forearm, like she was entitled to him in the moment. I took a sip of the bourbon. It burned good, honest. The dining room buzzed with polished toasts and crystal laughter. Trish was there, clinking her glass against Sienna's like they were co-queens. Even Selena, the high-ranking VP with eyes sharp as razors, sat at the far end, watching everything like a silent referee. And there she was, my wife, celebrating her birthday, basking in admiration, toasting with wine I paid for, in a room I unknowingly sponsored, with people she wouldn't even introduce me to. It hit me harder than I expected. Not the betrayal. That part, I'd made peace with. What cut deeper was how natural it all looked. Like I'd never existed in her frame. Like the nights we built vision boards and budget plans were just warm-ups for the life she really wanted, with someone who wasn't me. The evening unfolded like a stage play. Courses arrived, scallops, lamb, imported cheeses. Bottles of wine flowed. Bryce whispered something that made her toss her head back laughing. Her hand slid down his back. And then came the check. I leaned forward slightly, heartbeat steady. Sienna reached into her clutch and pulled out the black card I gave her. The card. The decoy. She handed it over with a flourish, like a queen rewarding her knights. The server took it with a nod and disappeared. The first few seconds were normal. The laughter continued. The wine refilled. Then the server returned. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The card didn't go through." Her smile flickered, but she recovered fast. "That's odd. Try again." He nodded and left. Across the bar, I watched the tension start to bloom. She glanced toward Bryce, laughed a little too hard at nothing. The server came back again, more apologetic this time. Still declined. A pause. Sienna's cheeks flushed. Not with embarrassment. With panic. I could see it in the way she gripped her clutch, in the way her fingers curled like claws around her phone. The texts started flying. First one. "Sienna, something's wrong with your card. Call me now. Then again. Sienna. What the hell is going on? Everyone is looking at me. And once more, the classic move. Sienna, fix this. Please. I didn't respond. Not right away. I took one last sip of my drink, set it on the napkin, and reached into my jacket. My phone buzzed again. Sienna, I'm begging you. I typed slowly, calmly, and hit send. Malik, look behind you. I stood. Her head whipped around. Her eyes locked on mine, and for the first time in a long while, I saw it. Fear. Not of me. Of the mask slipping in front of the very people she worked so hard to impress. I didn't smile. Didn't blink. Just buttoned my jacket and began to walk. The server hovered awkwardly with the check. Bryce shifted in his seat, his hand slowly removing itself from her arm. Trish stared between the two of us like she was doing the math and didn't like the answer. Selena narrowed her eyes and said nothing. I didn't need to storm in. The silence did all the talking. Sienna opened her mouth, but no sound came. And I kept walking. Past the table, past the gawking stares, past the illusion of a marriage that had been over long before I finally admitted it. This wasn't revenge. This was clarity. My footsteps were slow and deliberate as I approached their table. 12 of them, seated like royalty in a court built on illusions. Lucern's gold pendant lighting gave everything a warm, expensive glow, but it couldn't soften the ice in Sienna's eyes when she finally realized I was walking toward them. The moment I reached the table, conversation died. It didn't taper off, it stopped, hard. Forks paused midair. Wine glasses froze before lips. Even Bryce, smug in his navy blazer with the loosened tie and the practiced lean, shifted uneasily. I took my time, reached into my inner jacket pocket, and pulled out an envelope. White, thick, sealed. I set it gently on the table beside Sienna's untouched dessert plate. No one spoke. I looked directly at her. Actually, I said, voice calm, firm, controlled, I'm not her driver. I'm her husband. Or I was. A few heads turned sharply. A few jaws slackened. One woman audibly gasped. I didn't stop. For 2 years, I paid half her bills. I paid for this dinner. I paid for her last birthday, the trip to Barbados, the furniture in her condo, and those shoes on her feet. I never asked for applause. Never demanded gratitude. I thought love meant partnership. Turns out, I was just her Uber with benefits. Sienna's mouth opened, but I held up a hand. Don't. Just listen. I turned to the others. Trish, Bryce, even Selena. She told you I was just her driver, right? Like I was lucky to be in the room. Like I didn't build the foundation under every celebration she's hosted in the last 2 years. Then I opened the envelope and spread the contents across the white tablecloth. Photos. Real ones. Us on the rooftop in New Orleans, arms wrapped tight. A dinner from our first anniversary. She'd worn red. I'd burned the steak. A selfie in bed after our first fight, where she insisted on taking a picture to remember how we made up. Birthday cards in her handwriting. Movie stubs. Plane tickets. All of it. The evidence of a life she edited out of existence. The silence was different now. Not awkward. Not confused. Heavy. Selena, the VP with eyes that didn't miss much, leaned forward and studied the photos. Then looked at Sienna. You're married? She asked, cold and clipped. Sienna stammered. We're separated. It's complicated. No, I said. It's dishonest. Bryce removed his hand from the back of her chair. He leaned back, eyes narrowing, calculating. Trish just blinked at Sienna, lips pursed, watching her unravel in real time. She asked me to fund this dinner, I continued. Didn't even invite me. Just assumed I'd pay like I always do. So I gave her a card. A decoy. Just to see what she'd do. And here we are. Sienna's voice came low and cracked. Why are you doing this? I met her eyes, finally. You mean why am I not staying quiet like usual? Why am I not swallowing the insult? You introduced me as your driver, Sienna. You told a room full of people I wasn't worth your name. That wasn't a mistake. That was who you are. No one came to her defense. No one laughed. No one brushed it off like a misunderstanding. Because they knew. They'd seen enough. The image she'd curated so carefully, the career woman with the glamorous life, was cracking, flaking away under the weight of her own lies. I took one last look at her, then turned back to the group. Happy birthday, Sienna. And no, I'm not grateful, but I am relieved. And with that, I walked away, past the stunned faces, past the polished glass walls, past the valet station and the doorman who gave me a curious nod. The night air greeted me like an old friend. I took a long, slow breath and looked up at the stars, wondering how many people I'd let shrink me for the sake of peace. It wasn't peace. It was performance. As I walked down the block, my phone buzzed again. Her name. Her face. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because I wasn't her driver. Not anymore. The first voicemail came in just after midnight. Malik, please. Just, please call me back. I need to talk to you. It wasn't supposed to go like that. Then came another an hour later, then 3 more by dawn. By the end of the next day, my phone had 27 missed calls, 11 voicemails, and more than 50 unread messages. All from her. Some were apologies, laced with forced remorse and manufactured sincerity. Others were full of desperation, threatening to expose everything if I didn't respond. She went from crying to accusing to begging, all within the span of one afternoon. I didn't block her. Blocking would have meant I still cared enough to need silence. I didn't need silence. I was silence. Her words didn't shake me. They didn't echo in my ears like they used to when we fought in our kitchen over missed dinners and misread texts. They landed flat now, like a punch thrown underwater. I let them sit. I let them pile up. The fallout didn't stop with me. By Monday morning, her carefully built empire started to crumble. Darius called me from the gym. Yo, you seeing this? Seeing what? Check LinkedIn. Check your email. Hell, check Trish's Twitter. I didn't have to dig far. It was everywhere. Screenshots of Sienna's resume floating around online, compared side by side with company rosters. Someone at her firm had flagged inconsistencies, exaggerated roles, inflated titles, timelines that didn't match. And it wasn't just that. Her ethics report was now public. Selena had filed it herself after I walked out of Lucerne's. Turns out, not disclosing your marriage while dating a senior developer and accepting vendor perks funded by said driver didn't sit well with the company's integrity policy. Sienna was put on immediate leave. HR had launched an internal investigation. Bryce ghosted her faster than a missed invoice. Trish? Silent. Her entire social circle shrank by the hour. And still, the messages kept coming. You ruined my life. You don't understand how important that job was to me. We can fix this if you just stop acting like a victim. I stared at that last one for a long time. Acting like a victim. I wasn't acting. I just finally stopped pretending I was okay with being invisible. She tried spinning the narrative, of course. That was her gift. She called Darius and claimed I was controlling. She told her friends I'd trapped her in the marriage, painted herself as the trophy who had settled for a man with calloused hands and no social pedigree. But no one bought it. Because truth, when it arrives, doesn't need an introduction. It walks into the room and flips the lights on, even when everyone's mid-lie. The most telling part wasn't the backlash. It was how quickly people turned away from her, as if they'd been waiting for the mask to slip. Maybe they never fully believed the image to begin with. Maybe the cracks were always there, just like the signs I'd ignored. I didn't celebrate her downfall. That's not who I am. I didn't post a thing. Didn't tell a soul what she'd done unless they asked, and even then, I didn't exaggerate. The truth was enough. It always had been. What surprised me most was what I didn't feel. No joy, no triumph, no sense of justice being served. Just relief. I went to work like usual. Showed up on site, steel-toe boots on, hard hat in hand. Poured concrete, laid tile, sketched blueprints on my lunch break. The rhythm of my life never stopped because it was built on something real. Hers had been paper. Paper catches fire fast when the match is lit. A week passed, then 2. The messages slowed. Fewer texts. Fewer calls. She must have realized I wasn't going to respond, not this time. Not again. She didn't understand that silence wasn't the absence of forgiveness. It was the presence of clarity. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. And sometimes, that's the most powerful thing a man can be. The knock came on a rainy Sunday afternoon, just as I'd settled into the couch with a cup of ginger tea and a book I'd been trying to finish for weeks. I wasn't expecting anyone. I rarely did anymore. My circle had shrunk to the essentials: Darius, my crew, a few loyal clients. Peace, quiet, work, rest. That was the rhythm now. Simple. Solid. I rose slowly, setting the book face down on the coffee table. The knock came again, softer this time. Hesitant. I looked through the peephole and paused. Ray and Donna Walsh. Sienna's parents. I hadn't seen them since our wedding dinner, and even then, it had felt like a job interview more than a family gathering. Ray had sized me up with the practiced eye of a man who'd spent his life measuring success in degrees and digits. Donna had been warmer, but still reserved, her approval coated in cautious smiles and clipped compliments. They were nice enough, but I always knew they were hoping Sienna would marry someone shinier. I opened the door. Ray stood stiffly, umbrella in one hand, a thick envelope in the other. Donna looked tired, like life had taken a few swings at her in the last week and she hadn't dodged fast enough. "Malik," she said softly, "do you have a minute?" I stepped aside without a word, letting them in. They moved like they didn't want to disturb anything, standing just inside the doorway, dripping rain onto the mat. I didn't offer them tea, didn't invite them to sit. We all knew this wasn't a social call. "We're sorry," Donna began. I was already moist. "Truly, we're not here to defend her. We just thought, you deserve this." Ray handed me the envelope. I didn't open it. "Not yet. She's back living with us," he said, voice lower than usual. She's not doing well. She's lost her job. Bryce filed a formal complaint. HR recommended she resign quietly. I nodded once. I figured. "She told us everything," Donna continued. "Or at least enough. The party, the card, the lies." I stayed quiet, letting the weight of their words settle. This wasn't about vindication. It wasn't about making me feel better. It was guilt. A quiet confession dressed as a delivery. "She said you never yelled," Ray added. "Never raised your voice. Just walked away. That's all there was left to do," I replied. They looked at each other, then at me. Donna pulled a folded note from her coat and tucked it into the envelope in my hand. "She wrote you this," she said. "I didn't read it. I don't know what's inside." I nodded again. Ray cleared his throat. "And the check? It's for $925. For the party. The dress. She said it doesn't come close to what she owes you, but it's something." I finally looked down at the envelope. Thick paper. Sienna's familiar cursive scrawled my name on the front, Malik. No flourish. No hearts. Just letters that looked like they were written through tears or regret. Maybe both. "I'm not cashing it," I said, setting the envelope on the table beside me. Donna's shoulders slumped. "We thought you might say that." "It was never about the money," I said. "She knows that." Ray's face twitched, something like pride trying to sneak through years of hardened lines. "We raised her to want security," he said. "Stability. Maybe we didn't teach her how to recognize the kind that matters." That hung in the air for a moment, sharp and honest. I didn't respond. After a pause, Donna reached out, touched my arm lightly. "We just wanted to say we're sorry. For what it's worth." I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who once smiled politely at my calloused hands. The woman who had wanted her daughter to marry someone who worked in an office, not someone who came home with drywall dust on his boots. "Thank you," I said. And I meant it. For saying it. For bringing this. Ray gave a small nod. "Take care of yourself, Malik." "I am," I said. "Better than ever." They left quietly, stepping back into the rain. I stood by the door for a while, listening to the storm outside, then glanced back at the envelope on the table. I didn't need to open it. I already had everything I needed. Closure doesn't always come in words. Sometimes it knocks on your door, hands you the past in an envelope, and walks away. It was a quiet Wednesday morning when I walked into Café Clementine, a tucked-away spot near the construction site of the youth center my team had just begun renovating. The place smelled like fresh espresso and toasted sourdough, with jazz humming low in the background. Nothing about it was trying too hard. That's what I liked most. I didn't come here often, but I'd stopped in a few times, just enough for the barista to remember I preferred my coffee black with a side of lemon pound cake. I was still shaking the cold off my coat when I saw her. She sat near the window, sketching in a leather-bound notebook, a small ceramic mug beside her, half-finished. Her hair was up in a messy twist, loose strands tucked behind her ear, and she wore a paint-smudged denim shirt over a long black dress. Her face was focused but calm, the kind of peace that can't be faked. I didn't know her name. Not yet. But something about her made me pause. I ordered my usual, took a seat 2 tables away, and opened the plans for the youth center, trying to focus. We were turning an old warehouse into a space for after-school programs and community art workshops. It mattered. It was something real. But still, I found my eyes drifting back to her. A few minutes later, she looked up from her sketch pad, caught me glancing, and smiled. Not a flirt. Just a smile. Simple. Honest. She closed her notebook and stood, cup in hand, walking toward the counter. On the way, she passed my table and glanced at the papers spread out in front of me. "Construction plans?" she asked, pausing. I looked up, surprised by her curiosity. "Yeah." Youth Center over on Beach and 14th. Her eyes lit up. No way. I live 2 blocks from there. That building's been empty for years. Not for much longer, I said. We broke ground Monday. She nodded. That's awesome. I'm Layla, by the way. Malik. She extended her hand, paint on her knuckles, charcoal dust beneath her nails. No shame. No pretense. Nice to meet you, Malik, she said, shaking my hand. You design the plans too? Sometimes, I said. I run a small general contracting business. Do a little of everything: design, build, manage. Her brow lifted slightly. That's amazing. I don't meet many people who do all 3. She didn't ask what I really did. She didn't look at my hands like they were dirty or less than. She just smiled again and gestured to the empty chair across from me. Mind if I sit? I motioned for her to, and just like that, she joined me. We talked about the building first, how long it had been abandoned, what it used to be, what it could become. Then we drifted into conversation like 2 people on a sidewalk suddenly deciding to walk in the same direction. She told me she was a sculptor, part-time art teacher, part-time commission artist. Her work focused on restoring broken materials, giving them new life. Metal scraps, discarded glass, clay from construction sites. That's why I noticed your plans, she said. I'm always looking for the story in things. Even buildings. I smiled. Every structure's got one. Some just need a little help remembering it. We talked until her coffee was cold and mine was gone. She didn't check her phone once. She asked real questions about my work, my projects, how I learned the trade. And she listened like she actually wanted the answers, not just something to nod at politely before steering the topic back to herself. Eventually, I realized I'd been leaning in, elbows on the table, laughing freely. It had been a while since I'd felt that natural, that light. When she finally gathered her things to leave, she slipped a small card across the table. On the back, in clean handwriting, was her number. In case you ever need a sculptor, she said with a grin, or someone to share lemon pound cake with. I watched her walk out into the sunlight, her boots splashing through a shallow puddle without hesitation. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, not for what I gave, not for what I built or paid for or kept together, but for who I was, calloused hands, tired eyes, and all. That afternoon, back on site, I walked the empty halls of the old warehouse with a new kind of energy. As my team drilled and measured, I caught myself smiling, thinking of Layla's smudged fingers and curious eyes. There was still work to be done. In the building. In me. But maybe, just maybe, something new was beginning. And this time, I didn't have to shrink to fit inside someone else's frame. I used to replay that moment in the ballroom like a wound I couldn't stop picking at. Sienna's voice ringing out, loud, proud, slicing through laughter like a bad punchline. That's just my driver, she'd said. And the room had responded with awkward chuckles, followed by the kind of silence that buries a man deeper than any insult ever could. For weeks, that moment lived in me like a ghost. I'd replay it when the house was too quiet, when I drove past that hotel, when I looked at myself in the mirror and tried to remember the last time I felt like someone's equal. But time has a way of sanding things down. It doesn't erase the memory, but it scrapes away the sharp edges until you can hold it without bleeding. Now, standing here on the dirt-covered grounds of the youth center, boots thick with mud, blueprints rolled under one arm, and my phone buzzing in my pocket, that memory feels like something that happened to another version of me. A quieter Malik. A hopeful one. One who mistook compromise for partnership, who thought love meant enduring slow cuts and silence. But that man was gone. The building was coming along. What used to be broken brick and rotted beams now stood framed with strong bones, steel supports, and new drywall. My crew moved like a well-oiled machine around me, laying tile, checking levels, running wire through fresh panels. The sound of drills and hammers was music now. It reminded me of purpose, of progress. My phone buzzed again. I pulled it from my pocket and smiled. Layla, let me know if today's a good day to bring you lunch. I made 2 mini grilled veggie wraps and accidentally packed 2 slices of that mango tart. The corners of my mouth curved before I even finished reading. She had a habit of doing that, sending messages that didn't ask too much, but always made you feel like someone was thinking of you. Not for status, not out of obligation, just because. I tapped a quick reply. Me. I've got a break in an hour. Come by. I'll bring the lemonade. I slid the phone back into my pocket and looked out across the site. The sunlight caught on the newly installed windows, bouncing light into the dusty interior. This place, just like me, had been gutted, torn down, but not ruined, just waiting to be rebuilt with intention. I thought back to that night at Lucerne's. How calm I'd felt walking out, even with all the eyes watching, all the whispers starting behind me. Sienna thought she'd humiliated me, but the truth was, she freed me. Not just from her, but from the weight I'd carried trying to measure up to a version of myself that never existed in her eyes. She gave me the gift of clarity. Because when someone shows you who they are, really are, you have two choices. You can pretend you didn't see it, or you can believe them. I wish I'd believed her the first time. The flinch when I introduced myself as a contractor. The way she'd shift conversations away from my work. The fact that she never once invited me to her world, only took from mine. They weren't oversights. They were truths. She just didn't say them out loud until that ballroom moment. And when she did, it didn't hurt because it was new. It hurt because it confirmed everything I'd been trying not to admit. But now I'm a man who believes what he sees. And I saw Layla. I saw the way her face lit up when I explained how I reinforced the building's foundation. I saw the genuine curiosity when she asked to visit the site. I saw the way she stood beside me like she wasn't trying to rise above or shrink me down. Just meet me in the middle. That's all I ever wanted. Not praise. Not pedestal. Just partnership. My foreman called over from across the lot, holding a clipboard. "Malik, you good with the paint samples we talked about?" I jogged over, took a look, nodded. "Go with the cream for the main walls, navy for the trim." "Got it," he said, then glanced at me. "You seem lighter these days, boss." I gave a small laugh. "Yeah," I said. "I guess I am." Later that afternoon, Layla showed up with a brown bag and a smile. We sat on an overturned bucket in the back room, sharing lunch among the dust and scaffolding. She didn't flinch when a spider skittered by or when her dress picked up a streak of chalk from a stack of drywall. She just laughed and wiped it off. And when she looked at me, she saw me. That moment in the ballroom was supposed to break me, but it built the man standing here now. And for that, I'm thankful.